I was banned from my brother's wedding because I have a boyfriend. I stayed home, thinking nothing of it until my absence caused chaos. This morning, he showed up. My brother's wedding took place 2 days ago, and although I wasn't there, I know it turned into complete chaos. You might be wondering why I didn't attend my own brother's wedding. The reason lies with his wife's family. My brother did send me an invitation because he wanted me there, but his fiancée insisted I couldn't come simply because I have a boyfriend. To clarify, I'm a bisexual man, and I had planned to bring my boyfriend to the wedding. While she and my brother personally had no issue with it, her extremely religious parents, who had already pressured her into having a church wedding, would likely have caused trouble and possibly banned us from attending, creating conflict between our families. After discussing it with her, my brother told me I couldn't come and explained why. You might assume I was angry, but in reality, I felt relieved. Large gatherings overwhelm me due to my social anxiety, and unfortunately, I've grown accustomed to being excluded from events because of my sexuality. So, on the wedding day, I stayed home with my boyfriend. What I didn't realize was that my parents had no idea I wasn't attending. I was relaxing and cuddling with my boyfriend when I suddenly got a text from them, asking where I was because they couldn't find me at the reception. I told them I wasn't at the wedding and asked if my brother had mentioned anything. To my surprise, they said no and asked what had happened. I didn't saw any reason to lie, so I sent them a text message telling them exactly why. Now I have to admit I don't exactly know what happened after I sent them this message because they read it but didn't reply. And why do they care in the first place? They didn't notice I wasn't there before until the wedding was already over. They only noticed when the wedding party started. However, apparently my parents talked to my brother about it and all of a sudden my absence was the main topic of the wedding party. From what I heard, two fronts formed. On the one hand, my parents and the rest of my family against the family of my brother's wife, and apparently he as a husband now felt compelled to take her side and tried to argue in her favor. It's crazy to think that I was just sitting at home living my best life with my boyfriend while all of that shit went down on his wedding. The wedding party was ruined and my brother appeared on my door angrily screaming at me why I felt the need to ruin his wedding. Feeling confused, I asked him what had happened, and he told me everything. I explained that it was never my intention to cause any issues. I had simply told our parents the truth because they were unaware of the situation and wanted to know where I was. I had assumed he had already informed them. He yelled at me, accusing me of ruining his wedding. I told him it wasn't my fault that he hadn't been honest with them. I was only respecting their decision for me not to attend. There was no way for me to predict this outcome, especially since I've been excluded from events before due to my sexuality, and my parents had never reacted to it in the past. I assumed this would be no different. That being said, I have to admit that it was kind of touching to see my parents and the rest of my family stand up for me. They had never done that before, so it was a more than welcome change. Still, I can't shake the guilt, because, apparently, I really did end up ruining the wedding reception. Update. I didn't expect to give an update, but a lot of interesting things have happened. After my brother's visit, he and his wife left for their honeymoon. Turns out, the wedding party was even more chaotic than I had imagined. What's happening now is truly unbelievable. In my original post, I mentioned that two sides had formed, but I only meant that metaphorically. Now, it's becoming a reality. While the first couple of days after the wedding were relatively uneventful, things took a drastic turn the moment my brother and his wife left for their honeymoon. My mom and dad came to visit me and explained just how badly the wedding party escalated. It nearly turned into a physical fight. At first, I found it a little amusing, but the more I heard, the more it unsettled me. I also want to say that you did a great job convincing me this wasn't my fault, but hearing my parents' side of the story still left me with a bad feeling in my stomach. That said, things only got worse after they left for their honeymoon. When I say terror, I mean that my sister-in-law's family somehow found my Facebook and Instagram accounts and started bombarding me with hateful messages. I was flooded with insults from multiple accounts, all of which had a common theme, Christian imagery and the same last name. So, it wasn't difficult to figure out who was behind them. Since I don't really know my sister-in-law's family, the only things I was certain of were that I knew her personally and that her parents were openly homophobic Christians. But whatever. They not only started attacking me, they also found the account of my boyfriend over my account because we're linked as a couple and started to send him the same messages. The messages contained on one side typical bigot stuff like, "You're burning in hell for your sins." One even called me and my boyfriend two devils in disguise. The other side were just blatant insults. You get the idea. I called my parents and told them what they are doing. Then I sent a text message to my brother with screenshots of the messages his wife's family sent me, to which he replied that I shouldn't disturb him with that during his honeymoon as I already destroyed his wedding party. I couldn't believe it. He was just like them. He did send me an apology after my mom told me she called him. But none of this is the main reason I'm giving you this update this early. Because I got a call this morning from an unknown number. I hesitated because I thought it was one of them. And I was right, but it was none of the people who insulted me. I heard a woman's voice who introduced herself as the half-sister of my brother's wife. She said it didn't went unnoticed what her family was doing and she wanted to apologize for them. I told her I'm not going to tell anyone in her family about this and that I don't blame her for her family's actions. She thanked me and hung up. I don't know why, but I have this feeling she only did this to protect her family from being reported. My mother wrote to me earlier that she wants to report the insults and the harassment of these people and that she demands for my brother to divorce his wife or she will disinherit him from her will because that's not how she raised him. A little radical in my opinion, but I understand where she's coming from. This entire thing escalated so much it's unbelievable. Thank y'all for your support on my first post. Next day. Some of you have wondered why I seem so calm and casual in my update despite facing discrimination. The truth is, I've been in a relationship with my boyfriend for 3 years now, and what's happening now is nothing compared to what I've already been through. Hate messages are nothing new to me. I receive them almost daily, not just from my sister-in-law's family but from random people as well. Over time, I've learned to tune it out. I've faced far worse situations. For instance, there was a time when my boyfriend went to visit his family, and I couldn't go with him. We kissed goodbye at the train station, and after his train left, once no one was around to see it, I was jumped by a group of guys. The attack was so brutal that I ended up in the hospital with severe injuries. That experience alone should give you an idea of the things I've had to endure. That being said, we will be reporting my sister-in-law's family. But as awful as their behavior is, it's nothing I haven't already encountered countless times before. Update. It's been a few days, and first and foremost, my boyfriend and I are fine. Fortunately, my sister-in-law's family didn't take things any further than their hateful messages. My mom went ahead and filed a report against them. Since I didn't file it myself, I'm not entirely sure about the current status of the case. However, that's not the main reason for this update. One of my sister-in-law's relatives has actually decided to testify in my favor, against their own family. It takes an incredible amount of courage to do that, and I have a lot of respect for them. This is the same person who called me in my last update. Apparently, her family recently discovered that she's into women, so there's no point in her hiding it anymore. She reassured me that she's fine and has found a safe place to stay with a friend. I can't help but admire her strength. Imagine the kind of bravery it takes to stand against your own family like that. Looking back, I feel bad for assuming she only reached out to me in an attempt to protect her family from being reported. More importantly, what is the current situation with my brother? Well, my mom talked to him and told him to leave his wife or she will disinherit him from her will. He decided to stay with his wife and my mom made her threat come true. He's no longer in her will. My father did the same. When I visited them, I also told them that I wish that this entire situation went different. They assured me it's not my fault, but I feel like if it wasn't for me then my family wouldn't be ripped apart like this. Haven't talked to my brother since then. My boyfriend feels familiar. He also told me he kinda feels responsible for all this chaos. I assured him it's not his fault. But honestly, I wasn't even sure if I could say this in my position. On the other hand, it was my SIL's family's bigotry that ruined everything, and everything would have been fine if I could have just attended. Now, it's time for me to distance myself from this situation. We'll see what comes of the report. I took your advice and documented everything. The harassment and insulting messages continued up until 2 days ago, so I have plenty of evidence. Sadly, homophobia is still deeply ingrained in our society. As I've mentioned before, the reason I remain so calm and casual about this is simply because I've grown used to it. It doesn't affect me the way it used to. If I let every insult get to me, I wouldn't have made it this far. It's a coping mechanism. I've faced much worse, like being hospitalized just for kissing my boyfriend in public. Compared to that, messages and online harassment are nothing new. I just want to say thank you for all the support on my first 2 posts. Update. I know some of you have been waiting for an update, so here it is, though this will likely be the last one. Last time, I mentioned that my mom had pressed charges against my sister-in-law's family. To my surprise, we actually won. They didn't end up going to jail, but they did have to face consequences, quite literally, as they had to pay for their actions. One particularly concerning incident involved my sister-in-law's father trying to track down where I lived. He even asked my brother for the address, and unfortunately, my brother gave it to him. To this day, only God knows what he might have done if we were still living there. Thankfully, within the last 2 months, my boyfriend and I moved to a new place, one my brother has no knowledge of. Another interesting development is that their social media accounts have been deleted. I'm not sure if that was part of their punishment or if they chose to do it themselves, but either way, it's a relief. My mom has also carried out the threat towards my brother and disinherited him from her will. After he came back from his honeymoon, he begged her to put him in again. She said only if he apologized to me. She invited me and my boyfriend over, and my brother sat in the living room with this mad look on his face. She made him apologize, but I didn't accept this apology because I could tell it wasn't sincere. He did it because he had to and not because he was actually sorry. I told my brother that I am disappointed in him for who he became. Before that we had this huge bond, usually never judged each other for stuff like this, and all of a sudden he has such a problem with me having a boyfriend. I just don't get it. I told him that I miss the old him. He didn't respond to anything. He just sat there quietly staring at the bottom. After I finished, he just got up and left. This was the last time I spoke with him, and it's already been a few weeks since this happened. My parents paid much more attention to the discrimination I face since this incident. They wanted to learn more about the problems I face as a queer person. I really love them. My dad even got a bisexual pride flag for me and asked if he could hang it in our bedroom. I love that I have such great parents. I just wished for my brother to become the person he once was. By the way, since the case with my SIL's family is over, I didn't heard anything about their lesbian daughter. She supported us during the process, but we lost contact afterwards, and I just hope she's fine. Update. It's been 6 months since my final update, but I figured some of you might be interested in how things are going now. So, here I am, at least for this post. A few things have happened since then. First, an update on my sister-in-law's sister. About 2 months after my last update, she reached out and asked if she could visit. We talked for a while, and I was relieved to hear that she was doing okay. After the case ended, she moved in with her girlfriend, as her parents and the rest of her family had completely disowned her and even threatened her with physical violence if she ever tried to come back. Unfortunately, her relationship didn't last, and she later asked if she could stay with us for a few days while she figured things out. She ended up staying for 2 weeks. During that time, my parents visited and offered her a place to stay since they had extra space in their house. She accepted, as she wanted to focus on her studies, and my parents had no issue letting her stay longer. My boyfriend and I also help her out financially. We've included her in various celebrations, like Christmas and New Year's, and honestly, she feels like the sister I never had. Now, as for my brother, you're probably wondering how he's doing. Truthfully, I don't know. We haven't spoken since his so-called apology. He did try to show up at our Christmas gathering, but the moment he walked in, my dad kicked him out, saying, and I quote, "This homophobic rubbish is no longer allowed in my house." I love my dad for that. Oh, and in case you were wondering, yes, both of my parents officially disowned him. As for me and my boyfriend, we're still together, and this entire experience has only strengthened our relationship. In fact, I think he might be the one I want to marry. I've been thinking about proposing, but I have so many ideas for how to do it that I can't decide on one yet. Also, my SIL's family social media accounts have completely disappeared. Every single one. Though, I wouldn't be surprised if they just created new ones under different names. At the end of the day, I'm just glad this whole ordeal is finally over. I have no sympathy left for my brother. I just wish he hadn't become the person he is today. Everything that's happened to him is a result of his own choices. If you guys are interested, I can update you when I get engaged. Thanks for reading, and I wish you all the best. 2 months later update. Remember when I mentioned in my last update 2 months ago that I was planning to propose to my boyfriend? Well, I did it today. I had so many ideas that it was tough to choose just one, so I dropped a few subtle hints, not too obvious, just enough to gauge his reaction and decide from there. In the end, I went with a photo album filled with our most meaningful moments together. Each picture had a caption, some heartfelt and some just silly. For example, there was a photo of us at his favorite restaurant on his birthday, and the caption simply said, "Damn, that pizza was good." Which, of course, made him laugh. We went to his favorite spot in town, a beautiful lake, where I gave him the album as a gift. As he flipped through the pages, he was so focused that he didn't notice me moving behind him. I told him I was grabbing something I forgot, but in reality, I was positioning myself exactly like in the final photo of the album. That last page had a picture of me holding the ring in the same pose I was now standing behind him in, looking straight at the camera. The caption read, "Hopefully, he says yes." He turned around in disbelief, and the moment he saw me, he started crying. I didn't even get to finish asking the question before he said yes. It played out exactly how I had imagined, just like a scene from a romance novel. And now, I'm going to marry him. I've already shared the news with my entire family, except my brother, of course. They were overjoyed, especially my mom and my new sister, who literally shrieked with excitement over the phone. I assume my brother already knows since I posted it on Facebook. Some of you have suggested he might try something, and honestly, you're probably not wrong. But whatever he does, it won't stop us. Would you guys like an update after the wedding to hear all about it? Update. I just have to share this with you all. We're in the middle of planning our wedding, and instead of a traditional first dance, we've decided to have a lightsaber duel. But not just a random fight, we're choreographing the whole thing. Both of us are huge Star Wars fans, so this felt like the perfect way to make our big day even more special. My dad, who's also a massive Star Wars fan, loved the idea so much that he asked to be part of it. He even came up with a storyline: he'll have a lightsaber duel with my fiancée, where my fiancé has to prove himself worthy to marry me. Of course, my dad will lose, but before giving his blessing, I'll step in for one final battle to test my fiancé's strength myself. Only after he defeats me will I finally acknowledge his power in the Force. I know some people might think this is a bit childish, but I'm beyond excited. Our wedding is going to be unforgettable. Update. It's been about 2 months since I last checked in. My fiancé and I have been completely immersed in planning our wedding, and we finally have a date. It's happening next year. With so many of you following this journey, I thought it would be nice to keep you included in the process. My sister has been helping a lot, which I really appreciate. On a different note, my mom called recently to tell me that my brother apparently got divorced. I have no idea what's going on with him, and honestly, I don't really care. Too much has happened, and I have no interest in reconnecting. But I figured some of you might find it interesting. Anyway, enough about me. How have you all been? Update. I remember some of you saying my brother might try something. Well, he did. I'm still in shock. I'll share an update soon, but right now, I just need a moment to calm down. I'm incredibly grateful to have my husband here to comfort me. Update. The last time I actively posted an update was about a year ago. If you haven't been following my account since then, here's a quick recap. I got engaged shortly after my last update, and now, a year later, I'm married. To be honest, I'm still shaken up. I wouldn't be posting here if something major hadn't happened. Many of you warned me that my brother might try something, but I never imagined it would be this bad. Our wedding took place a few days ago, but we've postponed our honeymoon for now until we sort everything out, because, in this moment, we wouldn't be able to enjoy it. During the reception, while we were sitting at the table eating and talking with our parents about the future, one of the security guards, yes, we hired some, thanks to your advice, approached me. He told me that someone outside was begging to be let in. When I asked who it was, he hesitated for a moment before telling me it was my brother. I was ready to go out and handle the situation, but before I could, my father, who overheard the conversation, stopped me. He told me to stay put because this was my day, and I didn't need to deal with it. A little later, shouting was heard from outside. My mother asked me to stay seated. She would go see what was going on, and when she came back, her face pale as chalk, she told me that my brother and my father were shouting at each other outside. My brother demanded to be let in and my father told him to F***ck off. At some point, my brother left and my father tried to calm down, but you could still see the veins in his neck with anger. He explained what had happened. We thought that would be the end of it, but no, it was going to get worse. Much worse, in fact. My brother had somehow managed to get past the security guards. When I noticed him, he was approaching with frantic steps and my father tackled him to the ground. The music in the room stopped and all eyes were on us. I called the security guards. My father was on top of him, shouting. My mother covered her mouth in shock. My now husband stood protectively in front of me. The security guards escorted him outside and called the police. Why? Because they had noticed that he had a pocket knife, which he dropped when my father tackled him to the ground. I never said he actually tried to attack me with it, but I can only assume that's what would have happened. He was arrested for attempted assault. The way he looked at me, I barely recognized him. His eyes were filled with nothing but anger and hatred. The entire celebration was ruined. The police took statements from all the witnesses before sending our guests home. Right now, we're dealing with the authorities, which is why we've decided to postpone our honeymoon. There's just no way we'd be able to enjoy it after everything that happened. Beyond the disappointment of what my brother has become, I'm genuinely terrified. I keep trying to convince myself that he didn't actually intend to, well, end me. But how do you even process something like this? My husband and I are doing our best to move forward. He's been incredibly sweet and supportive, but I can tell this has shaken him too. I just wanted to share this with you all because some of you saw this coming and advised me to hire security, and I completely underestimated how serious the situation was. I need to step away for a while and take a break. Thanks for reading.